about gray sheet abstinence. I don't eat in between meals, no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life today, and I'm abstinent today by the grace of God and the fellowship of this community. And for those who don't know me, I'm also known as Marathon Mary, not because I talk really fast or I necessarily go on the Foam Bridge marathons, which I do, but I have trained for and completed 13 abstinent marathon, and it's 26.2 of the longest miles you can imagine. And I have actually run and completed 16 altogether. I'm also known as Tool Belt Mary because on my second anniversary, I was about to speak on a tools meeting, and I had done a favor for a gray sheet friend of mine, and she gifted me with a tool belt. And so when I was talking to her, I said, I don't know what tool to speak about. She goes, get your tool belt and put all your tools in it. Oh, oh yeah, that makes sense. I put my books, my cups and scales and spatulas and all sorts of wonderful things in there. And I grew up in Michigan. I'm the fifth of 11 children. Yes, my dad did have hobbies, one, and he did it well. I heard all the jokes about being from a large family. I also Catholic. So, for those who are Catholic, they'll understand this. I'm rhythm number five. And it's interesting. Every time I see a particular fruit at this time of year where we can have half, I remember my dad would, he'd get one for the family, and each person, and I don't know how, he perfectly sliced it so each person got the exact same slice. It was just amazing. And so in my family, my mother was the compulsive eater, and she was also a baker. So if she was trying a new recipe for a confection, we'd go, Mom, how was it? And she goes, not so good. You know why she said that? Because she didn't want to share it. I used to steal those AIDS candies that were supposed to help you lose weight. My mom had them in the bottom drawer of her dresser. We used to steal them because they were sweet. And anytime I had money when I was growing up, I went down to the corner to buy the penny confections. And I remember one time I wanted to run away. One of my brothers had a paper route. I said, "Come on, we'll run down to the store and we'll get supplies." And the supplies, of course, was confections. But of course, we never ran away. And so. I grew up in the time of Twiggy and hot pants were all the rage, and so I would always be on a diet, always. And so was my mom. So was my mom. She was always on a diet. So then it came a time, and I was like, I better do something about. I was also cross addicted, so to speak. I also drank. I also smoked. I was a four-pack a day smoker. And people would say, wait a minute, you're Marathon Mary. How could you smoke four packs a day? I would be on the route because I lived in Brooklyn and the runners would go by and I'd be like, one of these days I'm going to run that marathon. And I actually have run New York 6 times. So, um, And since I had my latest No Matter What on December 13th, 2023, I was driving home from work and I had a massive stroke. And I'm alive because God had a plan and it was not for me to leave at this time. And I think I know I heard the prayers went around the gray sheet world to keep me here, so I'm still here. And the surgeon told my wife if Mary wasn't in the shape she was in, she would not have made it. So my mom had the same kind of stroke, so it's genetic. Her sister had the same kind of stroke, except when my mom had her stroke, she had it in April, and then she died in June because she also had congestive heart failure. And because I weigh and measure my food, I don't have any heart condition at all. whether it's genetic or not. Um, uh, so yeah. And then also exercising for me is a gift as well. People, a lot of my sponsees, they poo-poo. It's like, oh, oh no. Or even my sister, she goes, only time I run is if somebody's chasing me. And I'm like, but it helps my mental health. So I said, I'm spiritually fit, I'm physically fit, and mentally fit. And I also, after the stroke, I started seeing a therapist on Zoom. Thank God for Zoom. And for because of COVID, I get to see familiar faces that I know for years. We kind of grew up in this program, and it's a gift to see you all on the. This is the International Gray Sheet Hollywood Squares today. This is really cool. So, I prayed and prayed and prayed. Please, God, just stop that noise in my head. Where to go, what to eat. I couldn't figure it out. Salty, sweet, crunchy, smooth, blah, 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 blah. It just went on and on and on. So when I came to Gray Sheet, I was 40 years old. On my 40th birthday, I met a Gray Sheeter at a celebration I was at. And like a good compulsive person that I am, I went home with her. Just no, I didn't know her last name. That's what my therapist would say. At least get their last name before you sleep with them, Mary. Not that I was that easy, but it was a good thing. That's what came. I got Gray Sheet out of the relationship, and that to me is the best gift. So she was my Gray Sheet angel, and I'm 70. If you add up the 30 years in Gray Sheet, and I was 40 when I got here. So, and it's truly the fountain of youth, and I am just so grateful. I can't even tell you. I grew up in the New York City community, and they taught me, Mary, when you get 90 days, you do a service. Mary, when you get 90 days, you get into get into the AWOL and do and practice the steps, learn the steps, because I like to say the steps of the now what of the program. The gray sheet helps me get take the outward manifestation of the disease, but it's the 12 steps that take care of my living problems. Because guess what? Just because I don't eat in between meals, friends, family, etc., they really don't give a rat's ass. They're like, you're not going to eat this? More for me, kind of thing. My wife, who we've been together for 25 years, I say, I'm sure people would argue with me, but she's the best gray sheet spouse because when I was in surgery to have my right carotid artery cleared out and a stent put in, she called my sponsor and she said, Mary hasn't eaten since lunch. What do I do when she gets out of surgery? She told her exactly what to do to keep me abstinent because I was in the ICU for 2 weeks and then I was in rehab for 4 weeks. And in rehab, they got me on, the physical therapist said, Mary, I think we're going to get you on a treadmill tomorrow. And she said, I wish I had a camera for the look on your face. I said, that's like dangling that giant orange thing in front of a horse. I was like, yes, yes. And so I excelled in the physical therapy. So I walked out. The left side of my body was paralyzed. And I remember being in the ICU and they'd say, Mary, wiggle your toes, give us a thumbs up. That's why when I wave to people, I make an effort to use my left hand because I couldn't move my left hand. And I certainly couldn't do a thumbs up. And my wife would, I had a 6-speed BMW. So she'd, Mary, hit the clutch. Of course, it's the left foot. Couldn't do it. But they told me to read the ingredients on whatever I was eating. When in doubt, leave it out. I would call my sponsor. And I remember calling my sponsor at the time about a particular thing. She said, and I said, it's only one ingredient. She goes, Mary, it's pure sugar. And I went, oh, sorry. Okay, duh. That's why I called you. 5 minutes? Okay, great. So then I didn't know why I had to go to meetings because I didn't even understand the words that they were saying. Bulimic, anorexia. I just didn't understand it. And then I didn't, you know, eat out of boxes and bags. I didn't stick a toothbrush down my throat to throw up. But then I started to listen to what people were saying, what they did to stay abstinent when they got sick and had to go to the hospital, or their partner or, wife or spouse got sick or passed away, or their children passed away, and what they did in all sorts of situations. So I said, oh, okay, I get it now. So when I'm in that situation, that's what I do. I just call, if my sponsor's not available, call somebody, Mary. We don't make independent food decisions. We don't do that. And so that's what I do. I put this first no matter what. Absolutely. In fact, I got invited to a dinner this evening. It's at, I forget what time it is. I said, I'm sorry, I can't go because I'm starting a Listen to God group. And is it that important? Oh yeah. Because if my wife knows what happens if you miss an AWOL, especially if you do a 4-week AWOL, you're out. So she goes, "Is it an AWOL?" I go, "No, it's a Listen to God group." Is it really that important? Yeah, because that supports my abstinence. And in fact, working the steps gets me closer to God. Because if something happens, the first thing in my head is not going to be about food. The first thing in my head would be, God help me. Thank you, God. Those are my two favorite prayers. God help me. Thank you, God. God help me. People get annoying. I just give them directly to God. Above my pay scale. Sorry. That's why um I got 5 minutes left, right? I didn't bring at my sister-in-law's house up in New Hampshire, and it's so interesting. I totally forgot. Sorry, Michelle. Thank God you reminded me that I was speaking today because I'm still up in New Hampshire. And I kept looking at my big book and I go, no, I don't think I'll need it. So, what I normally do is I read page 66 in the big book, which talks about resentments. You know, I can't hold on to resentment I can't, well, it doesn't say you can't get angry. Basically, it says you can get angry, but let it go. And then I like to say, then go to page 552. Pray for the person to get everything that you want. I would tell that to my sponsees, and they go, pray for him. He did this, that, and the other thing. I go, I'm telling you, you're going to get the relief if you pray for the person. And then I say, this is a fourth edition of the big book. And then go to page 417 where it talks about acceptance. In fact, when I was in the rehab, I said, God, boy, this brings whole new meaning to the acceptance prayer, being in a rehab, because it was simple things in life. You'd be surprised that you're not able to do certain bodily functions. I'll leave it at that. It's like, whoa, just crazy. And my mom passed away. One more minute? Okay, cool. Thank you, Anna. My mom passed away. I thought I was going to die. But no one has ever died from abstinent pain. Was she the best mom? Not necessarily, but she was my mom. And then my dad died shortly after. And it wasn't as bad because I knew he was with her, and they were just the best couple. They were the happiest couple, obviously, with 11 children. And um, I just love Gray Sheet. I love the food. And in fact, I knew somebody who has passed on, and she said, Mary, I wouldn't be doing it this long if the food wasn't yummy. In fact, in the rehab, I couldn't sleep, and I kind of closed my eyes, and I saw her. And she looks at me and she goes, nice try, Mary. You're not done yet. I said, okay. And, and with that, I'll pass. Thank you all.